While I love my JRPGs, I can definitely say that my experience with the Cousin, the tactical RPG, is a lot less so. Not to say I don't like them. Many have seemed daunting for years, and I passed them up for games I knew I would enjoy. So playing a bit of catch-up over the years has gotten me a lot more familiar with the genre. And honestly, I'm surprised it took this long for me to play Shining Force. I was sold upon the concept of a retro tactical JRPG made by the same man to produce Golden Sun, my love, around a decade later. Give me any chance to glaze Golden Sun, and I will. Don't test me. For a good chunk of time, Fire Emblem was my only exposure to the tactics side. I have dabbled a bit into others now over time. Triangle Strategy, Valkyria Chronicles, Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor, and I've recently played through Unicorn Overlord, just to name a few. I mess with the overall concept, even if I am not the most polished of the bunch. Around the time I started Unicorn Overlord, I guess I was in a sort of mood to try some more, so I also was playing Shining Force for the first time. As prefaced, I knew of the series for a while due to being a Golden Sun fanboy, but I never really got around for one reason or another. I guess it probably is related to not owning a Sega Genesis, so regardless, we are now in a post-Shining Force 1 world for me, and how do I feel? Did it age well, and is it worth playing? And of course, will I continue with the series? And here we go. This is Shining Force, released for the Sega Genesis in 1992. Let us dive in. A surprise for me more than anything is the history of Shining Force. For too long, I assumed it was a niche franchise that faded away into obscurity. And well, I honestly got confused looking into this. This is a volatile and a hard series to wrap my head around. Starting back in the series is the Shining series, not Shining Force series. This is important as the list of games in this moniker expands tenfold. Case in point, Shining in the Darkness is the first in the series of the Shining franchise. It's a sort of dungeon crawler RPG. The Shining Force name of games stay pretty consistent with being a tactical JRPG. There were a lot of releases, remakes, and spin-offs for the Game Gear specifically, and moved to the Saturn over time. The big change is at the turn of the century. Hiroyuki Takahashi, and more specifically Camelot Software, had been the sole developer for the Shining series, but after 1998, Camelot moved to Nintendo. There, Nintendo stuck Camelot into the Mario Sports sweatshop and are now banned from making games that rhyme with Solded Gun. The IP stayed with the parent company Sega, which had bigger and bluer titles to allegedly focus on. No, it seems Sega decided to reboot the series after dipping out of consoles. Sega in the early days had two big-name RPG franchises of Phantasy Star and Shining, and they said that was too many and clearly cut that number of JRPGs in half. Shining became a whole new universe and story, changing into an action RPG more than the original styles. There were some remakes like the GBA remake of Shining Force 1 and a DS game that kept the tactics alive, but they were few and far between. We saw a hop around of many developers assisting Sega for the many projects like Grasshopper Manufacturer for the Shining Soul games and Media Vision for some of the more recent titles like Shining Blade, Arc, and Resonance. Now, not saying the game quality dipped at all, I have not played most of these games, but I do have Shining Resonance here as the last of the mainline series at this point, and the games really don't look remotely related. Many scores didn't hit the strides, and the fanbase was simply lost. I mean, I have seen this game and never thought the Genesis original and it were of the same franchise. Maybe there was an identity crisis and some mismanagement by Sega. Sega had bigger and more successful IPs, and I think a lack of proper vision after Camelot and Takahashi left really made the Shining series struggle quite a bit. Grasshopper is run by Suda51 with games like No More Heroes or Lollipop Chainsaw, and Media.Vision had hands with Wild Arms, Valkyria Chronicles, and just recently helped with 100 Line. Now, I would consider both of these developers rather competent, but with that so-called rebranding, I think something was lost along the way. Probably did not have a full-time leader, so to speak, as well. Well, this tangent will end for the time being. Trying to get a solid understanding of the Shining series sent me down a rabbit hole of confusion, disappointment, depression, and then acceptance of the series' demise. Now, once again, I don't have the experience to say that this series is now in a bad spot. I would actually have to play these games to get a better opinion on this, but man, it is something that is not fun to see. Now back to the original, Takahashi was in control of Shining Force 1, after the success of Shining in the Darkness. Now, we saw the genre shift a bit. Many compared it to Fire Emblem, which I totally understand. The games hold many similarities with movement, classes, promotion, and the like. Even playing it, I really felt some core Fire Emblem in there. Now, Takahashi was actually asked about the influence of the original Fire Emblem, but apparently said that the tempo of the title was so bad that it was something that I didn't even want to play. Man, that's brutal. The inspiration was mainly Dragon Quest and allegedly Silver Ghost, an obscure Japanese-only game which had you control multiple characters at once. Wanting to change up the formula of Dragon Quest battles was clearly done. The game was successful, called a great RPG, and accessible as well. Sales were also great as well, topping charts upon release. The series clearly kept going, as I said. The remake saw mostly the same content, with change in some gameplay as well as some added characters and story beats. Do not mess with the art style though, it really kind of bugs me in the crappy Dragon Quest mobile port kind of way we saw. The actual release cycle was rather slim for Shining Force 1, but wanting to preface is I had trouble grasping it. And now I also wanted to introduce Camelot, as this was the inception of the company. I was always told DNA from Golden Sun was seen in games like Shining Force and Beyond the Beyond, and I see that for sure now. Let's discuss the story and game and how it differs from RPGs in the same lane. We get a storybook-like intro into our game's world. The land is known as Rune, and we zoom into Gardenia, our home. Our protagonist is Max. Didn't know that right away, so he is now Josh. Sorry. Anyways, Max is a swordsman in training and soon appointed leader of the so-called Shining Force. The Force is a sort of personal army for Gardenia, and the main goal is to stop the resurrection of the Dark Dragon. The Dark Dragon was in the opening as this true evil that has been banished. See an evil demon of any fictional medieval world. Currently, the amassing army of the Kingdom of Runefaust is planning on invading and resurrecting the said evil deity dragon thing. Well, we get our army amassed with a few local Gardenia residents and friends, along with Nova, the advisor of our king and now coordinator of the Force. Preparations are all set, but Runefaust begins the worldwide conquering with a crap ton of monsters and demons at our doorstep. The king of Runefaust, Ramladu, was a respected man, but suddenly changed. Definitely not in part to the many evil people that seem to run his commanders. Runefaust has many, but for the time being we will talk about his main two, being Cain and Dark Soul. No, spelt like this. Cain leads the assault on Gardenia, killing the captain of the guard and the king with little effort. We are spared, seen as too weak, and the town is left in shambles. With the heavy losses, the Force builds up their army and slowly traverse the world to take it out of the clutches of Runefaust. We begin our worldwide adventure, saving town after town and recruiting members to the ever-growing Force. While battles are tactics-based, the town exploration is more of a standard RPG fare, seeing that Dragon Quest-like inspiration in full force. You talk to NPCs, shop, and every town comes equipped with a makeshift base where you can do all sort of Force customization. Characters will switch in and out here, and you can do things like view statuses as well. The game does follow as Force progression. You cannot really go back to areas seen in previous chapters, but the overworld can also be explored to a small degree as well in each isolated chapter. Battles take place everywhere, in the world, towns, castles, ruins alike, and you really must be prepared. Battles are very similar to other tactics games I've played. I don't want to continuously compare because it seems like Takahashi didn't even want to, but there's a lot here from other games like Fire Emblem. Each character is a class with weapons, movement, stats, and general perks. You move each character one at a time in a large grid-based map, basing off speed. When opposing sides meet, a battle occurs, and then boom. If you are still unfamiliar, I would always compare a complicated chessboard with mini RPG battles in between. What is surprising is the class system in this game as well. We get a solid set. Max is your Lord type, an all-rounded strong physical character. The prototypes are usually good in these games, as they kind of need to be to move the story along, and loss of Max is also loss of battle, so you want them to not die in one hit. We also see Cleric, Mage, Warrior, Archer, and Cavalier type classes in our hometown friends. None of these guys unfortunately have really much in the way of personality. What you see is a box of 2 or dialogue at best, with one quirk in them if that. The only one we see a bit more of is Lo, seemingly our closest friend, but really this is only in the story for someone to talk to you as Max is mute. It is a shame too, as the designs are rather cool and unique. Some characters could have had a good arc as well, I think. We see many from the people that are devastated by war and reclaim their lands and all that stuff. There's more personal stories like May and Henri, the daughters of the captain and the king of Gardania, respectively. Both join to avenge their father's deaths, but don't get really much in screen time post-joining. I will say uniqueness here, the character design is striking and cool. Comparing it to the bland anime designs of the current Shining games, these had so much personality to them. I really like how classes are associated with different races too. The knights or cavalier types that work very similar in other RPGs are all centaurs. The bird people are equivalent to Pegasus riders or other flying types. Archers and mages usually are elves, and warriors are dwarves. It's really cool, just another sticking point. Honestly, it's similar to why I like the character design in things like the Breath of Fire franchise, as anthropomorphic diversity we see in races are abundant and the visual design is all over the place. Things continue to get weird in merging many of the classes, as so many characters have unique classes associated to them. We have Xylo the werewolf, Blue the dragon, Adam the robot, Musashi the samurai, Hanzo the ninja, Jogurt or Yogurt, the hamster mascot of a race known as Yogurt. What the fuck is going on? And most importantly is Domingo. Domingo is a magical squid thing hatched from an egg. He will be your god. Obey. While starting as your initial fantasy-type world, it devolves rather quickly. Like, I enjoy the absolute zero fucks the development team gave with creating their characters. Continuity? What's that? Have you tried Robo-fucking-Rat-Mech? Other than that, general perks are still there. If you have played other tactical games, you probably understand the concept. Your cavalier types usually got really fast movement. Flyers can fly over mountains and forests without being restricted by movement. Once again, not trying to compare to something heavy like Fire Emblem, but a lot of people have played those nowadays due to the popularity spike, and yeah, a lot of the classes have very similar identities here. Most of the time, there isn't anything too crazy with the out there class types. Mix and match to your heart's content, and if I'm being honest, the game is rather forgiving. Max dying bounces you back to the nearest town or save spot, and you have to restart the battle in full again. This is how to grind levels if you need to. Max also has an ability called Egress to flee any battle and works similar to simply dying, minus the whole dying part. It resets the battle when, with no other penalty, it sticks as the best way to gain levels, especially if you're testing out an array of units. Now I'm fine with the forgiveness, as no battle preview leads to many mistakes. That is something I've gotten used to in a lot more newer games. You can at least see the outcome knowing what you're sending your unit into before the battle actually starts. That may be my biggest issue with this, as there's no easy way to see how effective something will be prior to simply testing an attack out. This can end bad, as some enemies have a tendency to one-shot many of the squishier units. My best advice is to use magic. Mages are busted with a capital bust. The spells usually do good damage, but higher levels give way to AoE spells. Henri was my goat, as the bolt spell hits at such a crazy high range that obliterates all enemy units. You only get like 2 or 3 spell usages with the higher MP costs, that's really all you'll need. I try to have a good spread of units, slowly rotating out if I felt somebody was slacking. I switched Hans out with Diane for archers, as I felt that the damage output was starting to lack overall. Sucks to suck, Hans. I had Luke and Gort as my warriors, but ended up keeping Gort as my main fighter, as his levels were overall better. It's funny, as a team of wacky characters stopping Evil Dragon, we have old dwarf named Gort who gets jacked as shit in his promotion. What? Late game classes get busted. I kept Hanzo and Musashi as mainstays just due to the crazy high stats they boast off rip. Another suggestion to keep is a flying unit or few. Amon was my main flyer, and thank God, cause these maps can suck ass. The town and indoor maps are not too bad, solid and usually nothing groundbreaking, but I'm talking about the overworld maps. Those are atrocious. They're usually barren fields littered with forests or mountains, limiting all movement aside from basically flyers and then nothing. It drags out the rather slow battles even longer. Not that I dislike the battles though. The art for the backgrounds are detailed and a really cool visual to look at. The battle animations too are shown to be super fun and visually appealing. The battle style really shows an early prototype of the Golden Sun layout too, which is probably the first thing I ever saw related to Shining Force. I like the old school design of the tactical RPG battling. The GBA Fire Emblem sprites can go hard as hell. Keeping up with the similarities, the blood of Golden Sun can be seen here in many places aside from just the look of the battle. Aside from the battle visuals though, we get to see things as simple as shop layout and designs, even having a deals section. It's the only other time I've seen that. The basic menu as well is very akin to both layout and traversal. The priest has his own sprite, is always at the rest stop, all options basically being the same as Golden Sun to reviving and removing curses and poison. Even if this doesn't really make sense all the time, like the town being comprised of a unique race of flying bird-like people and then your priest is an old white man. The humor of basic NPCs even has some identity here. If you were a fan of Golden Sun games and went back to some of these, I'm sure you would have a blast just sensing where some of that foundation was laid out. So the story continues on, taking out generals in the Runefaust army and saving the local townsfolk. Shenanigans ensue, but slowly that grip Runefaust had is opening up. The plan to revive Dark Dragon closes through with each passing day. We collide with Kain and duel down only to reveal once defeated that he is not as evil as initially believed. Kain was seemingly under control by somebody and was sent to do all the evil biddings. It is clear to everyone that the true man pulling the strings in his background is Dark Soul. Yeah, it's not really surprising with Ramladu having a sudden change and everyone seeming loyal to Runefaust specifically. One of the commanders you go up against midway is Elliot, an extremely loved and respected commander. You even meet him in a town prior and he warns you to prepare for battle instead of striking you down with no warning. He remains loyal to Ramladu. Unfortunately, the king is mind-controlled as well as Kain was. You duke it out with Elliot at Nice Falls. You cannot betray Runefaust even if it is a shell of his former glory, and passes away on the battlefield. Kain, back to normal, tries to fight Dark Soul, but loses and gets mega injured, allowing us to escape at the very least. This happens a second time as well, this time permanently killing Kain. We retrieve his Sword of Darkness and pair it with the Sword of Light, a mythical blade we stole from Dark Soul's group. After killing one of Dark Soul's loyalists, Michaela, we have the Sword of Light, a powerful sword for Max. Using the two swords allows us to forge the Chaos Breaker, a legendary weapon that should finally kill Dark Soul. The final confrontation is in Runefaust, has you striking out Ramladu first. His mind is so far gone, and only on death's door he remembers who he really was, breaking free of the mind control seconds before death. With only Dark Soul left to take out, the battle commences at a nearby fortress known as the Castle of the Ancients, where the dragon will now soon be revived. We head towards it and battle off in a final confrontation. Dark Soul is about to die when he uses the last of his life to summon the Dark Dragon for our true final battle. The fight is not super difficult since I grinded and Max just cuts through the dragon like butter, so that's hype. Also Domingo crushes. Like seriously, Domingo turned into a freaking tank. He floats, avoids some terrain, and is a very mobile unit, has some good support spells, and his ice magic is busted. Domingo turned into a straight unkillable god for me, and he was well worth the investment starting at level 1. Holy crap. The Dark Dragon is sealed by the Chaos Breaker, and we get a castle crumbling into nothing type sequence. Max uses his magic to warp the Shining Force to safety, but it leaves himself in the castle to crumble away to nothing. The Force wins, but with the loss of their leader, it ends in a sort of somber victory. We get a very quick epilogue where things seem to be on the up and up as Ruin begins to restore from the war. In the end, we see that Max is actually alive in a faraway land, taking refuge in a small, humble village. As it is implied that we are the ones telling this girl our story from the opening and menu screens in the form of a storybook. It's a neat aspect that comes full circle at the very least, but with that the game ends. My overall experience with this game is very positive. I think the game holds up rather well in terms of the gameplay experience. My gripes with the gameplay only end with lack of battle prediction, some maps being, well, garbage, and a little in the way of grinding being a bit obtuse. I overgrinded as I was leveling up some characters from nothing just to mess around, but I still think there was a sort of difficulty spike partway through the game. You end up really needing to promote classes, and it's one of those games where promoting will lose you on levels if done early. Most classes went from 1 to 20 and promotion unlocked at 10. You're promoted at 15, that's 5 levels of stats you'll overall miss on. That at least bugs me to no end, but it might have helped if you really need to. It had me grinding to near 20 for the majority of characters to make sure they didn't fall behind, and really that last couple levels grind was god-awful. Maybe not the optimal way to play, as a lot of the older TRPGs have a sort of ditch units who fall off behind and swap them out for better level up type units. There are plenty of characters to swap out with over time. The game has a loaded roster. Not super strong of complaints all the way through, but I think that this game is worth a play today. It has its own charm and holds the replay value with said units to mix and match. It has its own style of building up a small army, having your base slowly get bigger and bigger. Where they all hang out was also a cool touch to see. It was abandoned at the beginning of the game, and then it became a nice little humble hangout at the end. I lament what overall happened to the Shining series, as the potential was sky high and really fell into, well, not a whole lot. The game output is a lot less in the recent years anyways. There is direct sequels, and I really only think the games can improve from the first. Yeah, the story is rather generic for today's standards, but maybe the future stories hold up better, and I can only think character writing would improve as well as from the blank slates we really started with. I feel this series may be burnt out now, but at least someone like me, there is a whole series of untapped games that I really want to try out. Here's hoping and adding another game into my please re-release, remake, reboot, or simply make new content in games. Camelot's other RPGs sit there as well, if you ever heard of it. It's called Golden Sun. I'm starting to think that Camelot might be cursed, making cool worlds and games and then being subjected to the Mario sports bitches. Like, no shade to those games. The ones I've played have been rather fun sports games, especially from one guy who does not give a single rat's ass in regards to sports. I don't know, maybe I want this franchise to flourish too, just for the unique characters and all that nonsense. Like, I genuinely mess with the character design. And also, you know what else? If the game gets popular, just think. Domingo merch? I love getting merch of my favorite things, so I only see net positives from here.